15 million employees of state and city governments. There are $4 trillion of tax municipal securities outstanding. There are $1.5 billion, or $1.5 trillion rather, dollars of unfunded healthcare liabilities to state and local employees. And there are trillions of dollars of unfunded pension obligations. And it varies from state to state and city to city, but it is a problem that is not diminishing either in size or complexity. And it is probably the most underreported economic fact in American society.
I think on top of it, part of the thing is that we really don't know in a lot of important ways. Things will come up, crises will come in, Puerto Rico, Chicago, Center Falls, Stockton, but there are a lot of very, very many jurisdictions that have kind of long-term problems that they've covered up in a variety of ways using tools both legal and semi-legal to do so, and the result is that our ability to grasp what the problem is, and particularly what the potential risks are. So if the economy continues going great, there's one set of problems, and certain places may still be over their skis. But if things go in a different direction, the number of genuine crises will go up substantially. And so one part of this class is about not just about how to solve the problem, but understanding what the problem is. One of the things that's been interesting about this to me is that there's law all the way down in all of these issues, and traditional law school treatments of federalism and localism focus largely on regulatory issues. The regulatory power of the federal government vis-a-vis the state government and state governments vis-a-vis local governments, and limits thereon, all the variety of things that might occur. This class is about the other side of federalism. It's about the ways in which, as fiscal bodies, the federal government, state governments, and local governments interact. And it involves taking things from a variety of different places throughout the law school curriculum. So we do things on state and local tax. We do things on statutory interpretation and legislation and budget process. We do things on municipal bankruptcy, which is not in any traditional law school curriculum. We do things on local government law, which is my particular background.
You know, it's very interesting. When I was a student at Yale Law School, the major issues were, should the federal government have the right to tell a state that they can't discriminate on the grounds of race or religion? And the issues were states' rights versus all of the causes that were implicitly part of the value system that most of us shared at Yale Law School about how to make the world a more just and fairer place. And the argument was, hey, those are the prerogatives of states. And now we're sitting here 58 years later talking about what can be done to make sure that the federal government pays attention to the fact that the part of our system that is responsible for public safety, education, and health care is adequately funded to meet the most minimal level of needs.
One of the things that's fun about the class is the world keeps moving in this area. The timing of the course, again, it's not unintentional or anything, but couldn't have been any better. So, Puerto Rico is happening in the news in front of us. We're having a class on Puerto Rico next week. Things in Chicago keep happening. A major tax increase in the last couple of days, and we have a class on Chicago. This is a course of its time. And the result is that I'm constantly calling Dick, or when Dick and I are talking, I'm like, okay, so let's plan the class, but also, what the heck is going on in Puerto Rico? Did you see this thing in the paper? And it's been wonderful I'm working on a paper that's springing from this, that is, and it has been the way in which the world keeps on moving in this area, and this is such a crucial issue, and it's happening right now, has led to this being kind of a super fun experience, both for the purposes of the class and just for me personally, and then for my scholarship also.
You know, my interest in this subject started obviously when I was involved in the 70s with New York City's near bankruptcy. But then when I was briefly Lieutenant Governor of New York State and was appalled by the budget practices that the state was engaged in, that's when I said to my friend Paul Volcker, with whom I had shared offices for 16 years at that point, I said, we gotta raise some money, and nobody's studying this. This issue is so incredibly important to the people in this country, and it's not well understood, and it's not well reported. And so I think that we're doing a very valuable service by getting the next generation of leaders in the bar and in politics and public service to understand how important
That was
subject
a really nice moment at lunch a few minutes ago where a student said, I had no idea how hard this would be. Not how hard the class would be, but maybe that also, but how hard these problems are, that the kind of soundbite solutions that you hear when people deign to talk about state budget crises at the national level are wildly insufficient for thinking about the problems, and the number of people who are thinking about it is no one. I mean, not no one, but it's almost no one.
Few and far
Few and far
between. The ignorance universally in this subject is really quite fascinating. If you talk to members of Congress, for example, they are so unaware of this issue and unaffected by it politically. So if a state is going broke, or a city is going broke, or if a city, as most do, have to let teachers go or raise the tuition for public universities, the members of Congress are not involved. There is a tragic disconnect between what's happening in Washington and what's happening state and local governments throughout the United States.
And to the extent they do think about it, they assume that certain legal tools help solve the problem. So state balanced budget amendments, limits on debt issuance. They assume that the kind of parchment barriers will solve some of these problems, and they aren't.
There were always people at Yale Law School who wanted to go into the federal government. I had classmates who worked for Senator Kennedy and Senator Symington, and I worked on the Hill, and other people worked a lot at the Justice Department, etc. I don't remember anybody wanting to work in a municipal government. And I can tell you from all the years that I was involved in state and local governments, they had a tough time attracting talent. There wasn't the glamour associated with going to Washington. And yet, if you think about it, there are 19 million employees of state and city governments, 2 million civilian employees of the federal government, and the responsibility for all the important things that government does are the responsibilities of state and local government.
Police, housing, schools,
healthcare,
yeah. It needs the talent. And the great thing about it is that in many places, the ability to get involved and have real responsibility can come much faster